It powers our homes, our jobs, our entire way of life. Energy, it's this invisible force behind literally everything we do. It's the lifeblood of our modern world. But have you ever stopped to think about how much we really know about it? Like, where does it come from? Who's in control? And how long is it all going to last? So, that's the big question we're going to tackle today. We're going to peel back the layers of this massive global energy system and really get a look at what makes our world tick. All right, so here's the plan. We'll kick things off with the basics. What energy even is? Then we'll look at the world's fuel tank, zoom in on India as a fascinating case study, and wrap up by looking at how we can secure our energy future. Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, before we can even begin to talk about the global scramble for power, we've got to be on the same page about what we're actually talking about. Let's nail down the fundamentals. So the first big thing you need to get is the difference between primary and secondary energy. It's actually pretty simple. Think of primary energy as the raw ingredients. The crude oil we pump from the ground, the coal we dig up, or even the sun's rays. It's energy in its natural, untransformed state. Secondary energy, well, that's the finished product. It's the electricity that powers your phone when you plug it into the wall. And this chart right here does a great job of showing that whole journey. See? We start with the primary stuff, like coal and natural gas. Then it goes through some kind of conversion process. Think a power plant. And out comes the secondary energy we actually use, like electricity and steam. It's a transformation. Okay, the other key distinction you need to know is renewable versus non-renewable. This one's pretty straightforward. Renewable energy comes from sources that, for all practical purposes, won't run out. Think about it. The sun and the wind aren't going anywhere. Non-renewable energy, on the other hand, comes from stuff that's finite. There's only so much of it in the ground, and once it's gone, it's gone. And here you can see it laid out plain and simple. On one side, you've got your renewables, solar, wind, you get the picture. On the other, the non-renewables, which are mostly those fossil fuels like coal and oil that took millions of years to form. Grasping this difference is absolutely crucial for everything we're about to dive into. All right, so with the basics covered, let's zoom out. Let's take a look at the world's fuel tank on a global scale. What are we actually running on? Which fuels dominate the planet? And maybe more importantly, who holds the keys? Get ready for this number, because it's a big one. Over 85%. Let that sink in for a second. More than 85% of all the primary energy the world uses comes from fossil fuels. So yeah, for all the talk about solar panels and wind farms, the reality is our world is overwhelmingly powered by stuff we have to dig up and burn. It's a pretty staggering dependency. And when we talk about fossil fuels, there's one that's been the workhorse for a long, long time: coal. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. What we're looking at here is a story that started millions of years ago. Ancient plants died, got buried, and then over eons, immense heat and pressure turned them into this black, energy-packed rock. And boy, is there a lot of it. The world's total proven coal reserves are sitting in around 892 times billion tons. That number sounds almost impossibly huge, right? But it brings up a couple of really important questions. Who's sitting on all that coal? And just how fast are we burning through it? Well, this is where things get really interesting from a geopolitical standpoint. Look at this breakdown. More than half, over 50% of the entire world's proven coal reserves are held by just 3 countries: the United States, Russia, and China. When you control the fuel, you control a lot of the power. And that gives these 3 nations a massive amount of leverage on the world stage. So, about that ticking clock I mentioned, if we keep using these fuels at the rate we are now, here's the rough timeline. We've got about 113 years worth of coal left. But look at natural gas and oil. We're talking about 55 and 53 years, respectively. That's not a lot of time. It really hammers home the point that these resources are anything but infinite. Okay, so let's take this huge global picture and bring it down to a single fascinating case study: India. You've got a rapidly growing economy with over 1 billion people. And right now, it's facing a massive energy crossroads that really puts all these challenges into sharp focus. So where is all that energy in India actually going? Well, this chart tells a pretty clear story. The engine driving India's growth is its industrial sector, and it is thirsty for power. It eats up a whopping 44% of the country's commercial energy. That's where the demand is just off the charts. And what's feeding that massive industrial engine? You guessed it. Overwhelmingly, it's coal. I mean, look at that. Almost 55% of India's total energy consumption comes from coal. It's not just part of their energy mix, it's the absolute foundation. And that deep reliance, well, it brings both huge advantages and some really tough challenges. And here, we get to the heart of one of those big challenges. What this table shows us is how much energy India uses to produce 1 ton of something compared to the world average. And you can see, for major industries like iron and steel or paper, India's industries are using a lot more energy to make the same amount of stuff. This often comes down to using older, less efficient technology. It means they have to burn more fuel for the same output, which puts a huge strain on everything. So, okay, we have finite resources, we have booming demand. Where do we go from here? What's the game plan? Well, that brings us to our final section, the global quest for something called energy security. So, what exactly is energy security? Well, the World Energy Assessment puts it like this. It's about having a continuous availability of energy in varied forms in sufficient quantities at reasonable prices. In plain English, it means you can count on having the power you need when you need it and at a price that won't break the bank. That's the goal for every country on Earth. So how do you get there? Well, the strategy pretty much boils down to 3 key steps. Step 1, just use less, get more efficient, and conserve energy. Step 2, make more of your own energy at home so you don't have to rely on imports. And step 3, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your energy sources, so if one runs into trouble, you have backups. Let's just focus on that first step for a second, reducing demand, because it's huge. And there are so many ways to do it, right? We can make our power plants way more efficient, we can design smarter buildings, we can encourage more people to use public transportation. It all adds up. Every little bit of energy we don't have to use is a win. You know, this leads to a really powerful shift in how we think about energy. Energy conservation doesn't mean sitting in the dark. It's not about sacrifice. It's about being smarter, getting the same output, the same quality of life, while just using less energy to do it. In fact, a lot of experts now consider the energy you save to be a resource itself, and it just happens to be the cheapest and cleanest one we've got. Which kind of brings us full circle and leaves us with this one final massive question. We have built our entire modern world on fuels that have an expiration date. They won't last forever. So, what are we going to build the future on? That's probably the biggest challenge of our lifetime.